So, in order to save the Texas House, we're going to hear from two speakers next. We're going to hear from John Bryant and Ana Maria Ramos. Representative John Bryant represents Texas House District 114. He served in the Texas House before moving on and serving 7 terms in Congress, as well as being a U.S. ambassador. When I say John Bryant is a treasure, that is an understatement. I adore him. He is priceless and someone who is showing Democrats in Texas, back here in Austin, how to show up and how to fight for Texas families. And I am so excited that he's joining us this evening. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn this over to Christy, who's going to do an introduction to Ana. So, Christy.
Thanks so much, Nancy. You know, John is a treasure, truly a gem in Texas. And Ana Maria is a gift. She is such a joy to have worked with in North Texas. So Ana Maria is an educator, an attorney, a mother. She served in the Texas House since 2018, and she's on the Natural Resources Committee and the Human Services Committee. She has become a fighter for Texas families, and she's kind of just like amazing. I can't say that enough. So we want to welcome John and Ana Maria to the meeting tonight.
Oh, well, thank you, Christy and Nancy, very much. And thanks for inviting me. And thanks for all of your hard work. Let me talk to you like a seasoned political activist that you are, rather than making a speech about the issues we all agree on already. My theme would be, we've got to begin asking more of our elected officials. We can no longer be satisfied with people being elected and then going down and playing small ball in a major league environment. We can no longer go along with giving people our support for the House of Representatives and for the state Senate, and then watching them remain mute in the face of a daily barrage of right-wing rhetoric from Dan Patrick and from Governor Abbott, and of course from our Attorney General. We've got to have people that are willing to talk back. And what I found in returning to the legislature was that very few members have ever served when they were in the majority. They have begun, so many of them, to play a strategy that I refer to as a smile and a shoe shine strategy of remaining quiet, hoping that they're going to not make any enemies and maybe can pass a bill here or there and then go home and brag about having passed a bill. Let me ask you a question. What kind of a bill, what quality of a bill could you pass that would pass a Republican House, Republican Senate, pass muster with Dan Patrick, and be signed by Greg Abbott? I think the answer is obvious. There is no bill of any significance to Democrats or to the progressive agenda that could make it all the way into law. So why are they playing small ball and playing around the edges? And the reason is because this assumption that's grown up over the years that I need to go home and brag about passing bills. If you watched the legislature in 2021, you saw how we lost on voting rights and one issue after another. In 2023, it was diversity, it was women's health, it was public education, in which we actually adjourned the legislature without funding public education, leaving $21 billion on the table. It's a total wipeout. Why is that? Let me answer that with this question for you. When is the last time you saw your state senator face down Dan Patrick and tell it like it is to him and get in the newspaper doing so? Produce for me a clipping in which one of our state senators has confronted Dan Patrick for the way in which he speaks and for the way in which he runs the state Senate. I doubt that you'll be able to find even one. I would say the same thing about the House in many respects. We've got to begin to insist that those that represent us speak up and fight back and tell it like it is and vote no on the bad bills, and don't stand aside hoping that they can gain some kind of a little legislative achievement that they can go home and do a newsletter about. The stakes are just too high to do that any longer. I heard somebody say when I first joined the call that the problem is that Democrats are on the defensive too much. Democrats are not even in the dialogue. It's not a matter of being on the defensive. Go back and look at the dialogue that was taking place with regard to property taxes in the last session. It was an argument between the Republican lieutenant governor and the Republican speaker. We weren't even in the dialogue until Anna Maria and I and a couple of other members called a press conference and came up with a Democratic program that would have delivered twice as much property taxes to homeowners by not giving away property tax reductions to skyscrapers and refineries, a Democratic program. So that's just one good example. There are many, many more. I heard it said a moment ago that Texas is a non-voting state, which of course it is. It's not a non-voting state because there's something wrong with our voters. It's that they are not aware year in and year out that there is an alternative that makes it worthwhile to get off the couch and go and vote. They see a presidential race because it's on the television, although not very much because our state's not in play enough for Democrats to run a real campaign down here. They may see a governor's race. Beto ran an energetic race 2 years ago. But what do they see in between elections from their legislators, their state senators, or their House members? What do they read about with regard to a vigorous opposition? What do they see with regard to alternatives to Republican policies? Very little. That's why David Pepper a minute ago, I think, summed it up very well for us. We've got to make sure that our local officials are on the front lines every day, all year round, not just at election time with a bunch of brochures and coming to you as volunteers and asking you to do a lot of work, to put them back in there again so we can have another session in which they play small ball, play around the edges, and remain mute when they should be speaking up. Now, I'm going to get in trouble for saying all that, but that's what needs to be said.
You know what, John? I get in trouble all the time. So you know what? I'm happy to be in that club with you. I think I'm in great company. I just want to say. So high five to you. Very insightful. And I love it because you fight exactly the way I want to fight, exactly the way, honestly, most Texas families across Texas that are Democrat, we need fighters in office. We need people to represent us and we don't need them to back down. So we need you all. We need you all to fight for us. I'm going to turn it to Christy.
I feel like, my heart is thumping. I'm so excited hearing from everyone on the call. And John and Anna Maria, when we got them confirmed for the call, I was super excited because they exemplify for me what it means to be a happy warrior in Texas. Mm-hmm. These two are a force to be reckoned with. And it is a privilege to have you on tonight. Anna, quick question. MAGA has changed DC, and a lot of what MAGA has done has come out of Texas. How should we approach the extremists in the upcoming cycle? We're getting ready to elect new legislators in November. And they will be sitting there until 2026. What can we do? How should we organize?
Well, I just want to start off saying thank you for the invitation. And I love John Bryant. Like, he is such a breath of fresh air. I mean, getting your ass handed to you day after day after day, session after session. And then John comes and he's like, let's fight this. And John said, we can't, if we don't fight every battle, we'll never win the war. Why are we not fighting every battle? And I'm like, amen. And from day one, I never voted for the Speaker Phelan, and I didn't really know John then. And we kind of talked later, and he's like, I didn't know there was going to be a Democrat who wasn't going to vote for this Republican speaker. And I'm like, how could I vote for such an extremist? And we vibed so well. But just what John said, we have Stockholm syndrome, the Democrats do, when they go back and they're just at mercy to the predator, right? Like, there is no fight. And it is going to be worse. But what we do have in our advantage that they got rid of somewhat so-called the moderate ones is that we're going to have some some extremists there. Their party is extremely divided, and we can use that to our advantage, but we must stay united. And if we are not united and we continue to allow ourselves to be divided and essentially sell our souls out and our community out for a bill that really doesn't change lives, but it has, a checkbox for somebody when they come home, it is not worth it. And that's what John and I always talk about, is it worth it to compromise and to really risk all of the families and the losses and the damage that we're going to have, the consequences of bad legislation in our communities, without fighting. And it's very disturbing, but I think we need you all to hold these people accountable, to hold us accountable. We can't do it by ourselves. John got a lot of crap from Democrats for that article. They were mad at him. Democrats, as in my colleagues, were mad for him to call the shots to what was really happening. They don't want people to know. But if you guys are not paying attention, you're not monitoring, you're not following us on social media. And believe me, I get the same crap because I post all the voting stuff on social media. Democrats come and tell me, hey, you posted my vote. I don't want, now my people are calling me and I'm like, well, then don't vote that way. Vote the right way and your people won't call you. But don't get mad at me because of the way you vote. People need to know what we're doing over here and hold us accountable. So I think with these MAGA extremists and stuff, it'll be an opportunity for us to stay more united as Democrats, but we need you Democrats to hold us accountable. Senators, representatives, I swear to you, they tell you what you want to hear and you're working your butts off for them, but when they go, they're hoping you don't look and you're not watching. So we need you guys to watch. We need you to pay attention and continue to have these throughout session. Toward the end, it's exhausting and it's difficult to get us on, away from the House floor. But we have staffers, we have teams of people that can help relay that information to you guys. And we need you to have that rallying cry out to people. They threaten punishing me with sanctions for posting the voting records on social media, which is public information, which is freedom of speech, which is, what you should know about, but they do not want you to know. So the more you know, the more empowered people like John and I are. When we're fighting the fight, Democrats are watching, they get scared that you know what they're doing, and they will hopefully, they do start tempering some of their stuff sometimes. But John and I can't do this alone. We need your help. And I love you, John.
Well, thank you so much for that. It was funny. I'm so glad that I put David Pepper and you all kind of like next to each other, because actually in my notes, I put on here, John, you would get along splendidly with David Pepper. I just thought, like, when you were battling and I was reading David Pepper's book around the same time, I was like, these people need to meet because they're both talking about the same thing. I mean, we have to play offense. We have to put people in the hot seat and then draw up, the very, very stark differences between the parties. And so I guess, John and Anna Maria, like, how can we support you all during, like, while we're running, candidates are running right now, but what can we do as just Texas families to show up and support and also hold our Democratic electeds accountable? I mean, we rolled out a report card because some of them were not being held accountable, which is why we rolled out that mom's report card. But like, what do we do to, support you all, but also hold you accountable?
Well, the most important thing you can do, I think, to push the agenda that Anna Maria and I are talking about is talk to your own state representatives and ask them, why am I not seeing you speaking up? Why am I not seeing you in the fight? I don't see you speaking up against the Republican leadership. Why don't you join in and try to, change the environment down there? The second thing you can do is don't buy into what the consultants tell you about these districts. Anna Maria ran, I can brag on her more than she can brag on herself. Back in 2018, against a woman who'd been on the Dallas City Council for 8 years and was a well-known person in her area over there, and in a Anglo district, by the way. And she and a bunch of other women got together and put a campaign together and won that election when everybody said, oh, they can't win, don't pay any attention to them, don't send them any money, and won anyway. You can win these races, but she won because she's authentic and saying things that people know need to be said, and not tippy-toeing around and pretending and trying to act like she's one thing in one meeting and another thing in another meeting. That's why she's not only won, but has been reelected all the 4 times this time. So those are the 2 things I'd ask you to focus on.
And I agree with John 100%. And I want to add that you may hear from other representatives or people, well, we have to be moderate, or we have to my district was 51% Republican, 49% Democrat. And when I went to session, everyone was advising my colleagues, hey, don't vote like that the way you're voting, because you're calling us out and you need to be a little more moderate. And there was a Progressive Campaign Change Committee convention at one point, and they said, the only way you're going to excite voters is they know where you stand. Be a proud progressive. Don't be on the fence, because when you're on the fence, people don't know where you stand. You don't excite them. And so when I went to session, over and over again, I am either the first or second this session around the most progressive in the state of Texas. I never got on that moderate fence. And here I am going into my 4th session. But we have to be bold progressives, unapologetically wanting to take Texas forward, not acquiescing and being what I call it really is selling out to what you think they want. What about our people? What do the 30 million people in Texas want? They want us to fight. And listen, we have horrible policies in Texas, horrible legislation, but we can't blame it 100% on our Republican lawmakers. Our Democrat lawmakers, they play some fault in that too, and we need to hold them accountable.
I want to add to what Anna Maria just said about progressive and so-called moderate. Let me just point out to you that yesterday, the State Fair of Texas said they're not going to allow any guns into the State Fair of Texas because we had a shooting there. Now, if you've ever been to the State Fair, it's a huge crowd of people bumping up against each other all the time. And they absolutely needed to say no guns at the State Fair. 70 Republican lawmakers today came out and said that the State Fair ought to be allowing guns at the State Fair so they can shoot the bad guys when they do something bad. And now the Attorney General is saying he's going to sue the State Fair if they don't allow guns out there. That is what these guys are about. Being progressive simply means talking back against things like that. Being progressive means we want strong public schools. We don't want to compromise on vouchers. We want to have the best public school system in the country. Being progressive means a woman ought to have a right to choose, not splitting the baby, but a woman ought to have the right to choose right down the line. Being progressive means we're concerned about the 30% of Texans who do not know if they're going to have enough money to buy a meal next week. Being progressive means that when we have a tax relief bill, we don't ignore the nearly 40% of Texas households who rent their home and not give them any relief whatsoever, and give all of which came from sales taxes, to homeowners only. So when Anna Maria is saying be progressive, she's not talking about something radical. She's talking about just standing up to these billionaires. That's about all it amounts to.
That's right. Moving Texas forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. I know we went over time, but I'm so grateful that you all joined us tonight. And it just means so much to me to have you all here and to really kind of pump us up. I mean, we have several candidates that are attending this, and I hope you all are listening and getting pumped up, because we're going to elect some of you all so you could get to work with John and Anna Maria.
And I really quickly want to say, Nancy, that, we're talking about the next legislative session and the people that will be elected this November. So we need to support the people that we've endorsed in the districts to push out these cards, knock on those doors, make those phone calls, be the active organizers that we can be in Texas. And I want you guys to know that Mothers is important because we're here for the long run. We are not leaving after the general cycle. We are going to continue the fight here in Texas. We're going to push the state progressive, and we need y'all to help us build a strong team to do that. You know, many of our speakers, John, Anna Maria, so many, David, Mike, Vicky, gave me goosebumps when they were speaking. Ramona with her plans to help, you know, people organize in their communities. Please join one of those teams. Lindsay will drop the link in the chat of the mobilized links for each of those teams. We need your time. We need your treasure. If you're able to donate, y'all, let's change Texas for the long run. Not just through
all of you,
but through 2026.
we all need to be more than a voter, okay? We need to be more than a voter. We need to vote as a verb, and we need to knock on doors, talk to neighbors, register new voters, be donors, put up yard signs, wear the t-shirt. We need all of you to be more than voters this election, and we need you to team up with mothers to make a positive difference for Texas families. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
See you on the campaign trail.